welcome back into the Toronto 6 postgame show. I'm Ben Steiner. I'm joined with Justin Levine here today. And you know what? It's another Toronto 6 win. It's their second in as many days. We didn't have a postgame show yesterday, but today they're coming off a 6-0 win against the Connecticut Whale. Amy Curlew got herself on the board. Michaela Grant-Mantee kept going, and it was just an all-around great performance for the Toronto 6 as Elaine Chuli picks up another shutout, and the Toronto 6 improve to the top of the NWHL in their inaugural season. Welcome into the show, Justin. What were your thoughts on that really good game from the Toronto 6?
Such an impressive performance once again after a really nail-biting game against the Minnesota Whitecaps the night prior. They come into this game, and it's a team of youth versus a team full of youth and experience at the same time. So, honestly, just given, the shape of Connecticut's roster, I was really not sure what to think going into this one. And early on, I was just proven wrong. From the get-go, I saw the energy, and once the first goal happened, and it happened not so long into the game, I was like, all right, here we go. This either ends in either a really close score or Toronto just carries us. And in retrospect, they carried it onto a 6-0 victory and the number one seed. So I loved what I saw tonight, and specifically with players such as Mackenzie McNeil, who scored 2 goals. Michaela Grant-Mantee continued to light the lamp, and we're going to get more into this. But overall thoughts, I thought they played a fantastic game, especially going into now a 4-game win streak with that. Such an important time, and doing it as an expansion team is my biggest takeaway. It just, leaves you speechless. And for that reason, I think that everything's clicking now. They needed that boost of confidence. They have it, and here we go.
Everything's clicking, as you said, for the Toronto 6, and they have the most goals in the NWHL. Yeah, they've played a few more games than everybody else. They have 6 games total when you compare that to some of the other teams that only have 4, or the Riveters, who only got to play a few before leaving the bubble due to some positive tests of COVID-19. But the Toronto 6 have 21 goals this tournament, and Michaela Grant-Mantee has 4 of those. She's been magnificent, but this Toronto 6 offense has also been brilliant throughout the tournament. What do you think has gone right?
That's a great question. I think it was a bunch of girls, like I said, and I said this early on, who hadn't played with each other before. There was no chemistry, and because of the COVID-19 situation here in Ontario, the practices, they weren't all playing together. It was cohorted. So I think the fact that they had a practice opportunity before the bubble even started at Herbrooks Arena gave them a little more to work with, because they'd only had about 2, I think it was, full or nearly full team skates in Nottawasaga, which is in Allison, Ontario, but not all the players were at each one. And obviously, because women's hockey, the landscape again is different than men's, whereas they have full-time jobs, can't make it, etc. So the fact that they had that opportunity, yes, they started a little bit rough, but it gave them a chance to click more and to find who works with who. And I mean, the confidence showed after game 3, and they haven't stopped since. And Lisa Haley and Spiros Anastas are the minds behind them, along with Digit Murphy. They've worked night and day on Zoom conferences to, pick at those little things. And it's the little details that Digit told me that they're continuing to refine. And with each game, we're seeing those elements be a bigger piece of play. So again, really impressed with what I've seen.
And the Toronto 6, they've done well after those first 2 games. Of course, it was an opening day loss 3-0 to the Metropolitan Riveters, who are no longer in this bubble, but they needed that bit of a wake-up call. And then, of course, they got a bit excited against the Minnesota Whitecaps, losing 6-5 in the shootout in their second game of the franchise. But then everything started to come together, and you see a game like yesterday where they dominate the Minnesota Whitecaps. And today, they absolutely dominate the Connecticut Whale in their first game against them. They were supposed to play on Saturday against the Connecticut Whale before everything fell apart in the bubble with the Metropolitan Riveters, but they played them today, and they did everything right against the Connecticut Whale today. Were you expecting more out of this Connecticut team? I know we'll get to Carmen Klistovich, our Top Authority Connecticut Whale writer, a bit later in the show. But Justin, I just want to get your thoughts on this Connecticut Whale team, and if you expected anything more from them against the Toronto 6.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot of this Connecticut team, if you want me to be quite honest with you. They've got a new boost of youth, and that was thanks to general manager Bray Ketchum-Peel, who signed all of them before she stepped down as general manager. And one of those being Kayla Friesen, I was expecting to be their big target. And then with that, they've got for example, Mackenzie Lancaster, who was actually a last-minute signing due to an opt-out, among others. Abby Ives, the netminder, who has been rather a brick wall for them up until this point. So, yeah, my expectations were really high. I thought this was going to be a close game, if anything, and it wasn't even that. And after, I think it was the first 3 goals, was pulled in favor of Mariah Fujimagari, who was signed today, even though she was the league e-bug prior to. And they also added a couple other new faces, which Armand will get into a little bit more. But point being, yeah, I mean, it looked like they were not only sluggish, but there just wasn't anything there at all clicking. And I mean, yes, in that the same sense of Toronto, whereas players haven't played with each other before, that's one thing. But another element of haven't had the greatest tournament. Yes, the last two games have looked rather solid, but once you're on a kind of slippery slope of back and forth, it just adds in an element of question. And so I'm not sure what it was that bit them tonight, but Toronto took full advantage, again, coming right out of the gate, and it led them on to a 6-0 victory.
Well, the whale wasn't exactly swimming tonight, but the Toronto Six, I don't know exactly what a six does. Does it stroll? Does it swim? Does it fly? Well, they were certainly flying tonight, 6 goals against the Connecticut Whale, including an opening goal from Amy Curlew, who hasn't really hit the score sheet this tournament so far. But both her and Taylor Woods as well, including some other depth players for the Toronto Six, were great today. And Amy Curlew, she opened the scoring, and we'll take a look at that now.
They'll send it in as Allen hit the ice. Chance still there for Toronto here on the backhand, and it's in! Toronto scores! A deflection for the Six, but they'll take it.
That was the opening goal, and I thought that the Toronto Six had a lot come from their depth forwards tonight. It's not something we've seen so much this tournament. We've seen the top line of Brooke Brokfist and Michaela Grant-Mentis really dominate throughout the 5 games so far, but it was in the 6th game that we really saw some of the depth scoring come out. We saw a former University of Waterloo player, Tatum Claremont, pick up the 5th goal of the game, as well as Amy Curlew and Taylor Woods hit the score sheet as well. What were your thoughts on the depth players' performance for the Toronto Six?
Well, some of these players look terrific tonight. Again, Tatum Claremont finally getting on the board with her first goal. That was only a matter of time. She was a prolific scorer in university with the Waterloo Warriors, and she's played in the NCAA as well, where she's been rather solid, and that was with Northeastern. So again, I was really impressed to see her finally, kind of get her energy running with the Six. Then we saw Amy Curlew on the kid line. I mean, that line's been terrific the entire time, and Curlew has been more so the back end of that, not with the primary assist, but with the secondary assists, if anything. So, to see her finally kind of get on the score sheet with the goal today, and she had an assist yesterday, things are starting to go right there. I mean, I'm just super impressed with how this team is doing.
And Taylor Woods got on the score sheet as well, and I was quite impressed with her performance. We'll take a look at one of her goals right now.
Grant-Mentis for Woods, wrister, and it's in! Look at that shot from the point.
Definitely an impressive performance from Taylor Woods tonight. I mean, all of these Toronto Six forwards were firing on all cylinders, grabbing a 6-0 win over the Connecticut Whale. But I do want to get your thoughts on Mackenzie McNeil, who is from the Toronto area, and she was magnificent tonight for the Toronto Six.
Another one of those depth players you mentioned, and Mackenzie has had a very quiet tournament up until this point, but tonight she just, broke out. And what I've seen from her with the Toronto Furies in the CWHL prior to is she kind of remains as that quiet back end piece, but she will contribute where she's able to. And tonight she did just that. Matter of fact, she did that twice. And I mean, I love that because with the PWPA, she had a very brief stint there and didn't really get a good sample size after she came back from Hungary, where she was playing with Hvidovre, I think is how that's pronounced. So I wasn't surprised that she's kind of been one of the quiets, but it was nice to see her contribute and do so twice. I think that was an important piece and something that surprised Digit Murphy, certainly. But at the same time, she voiced her pleasure, and Mackenzie said post game that she loves being with the Six, and she was happy to be a huge, a significant contributor in tonight's 6-0 win. So I was really pleased to see that as another former CWHLer on this team of quite a few former CWHLers.
And we've got some Mackenzie McNeil highlights coming up later in the show. But right now I want to bring in the Puck Authority's Connecticut Whale writer, Armin Klistovich. He covers the Connecticut Whale for the Puck Authority, and he's been covering them this whole tournament. He's covered them over the years. Welcome into the show, Armin. How have you enjoyed this tournament so far?
I've really enjoyed it until tonight, and the Whale hit a block in the Toronto Six for the first time all tournament.
Yeah, it's been a good tournament so far for the Connecticut Whale. I know that they had some mixed expectations heading into this bubble in this abbreviated season. Where were sort of your thoughts initially heading into this bubble? I know some people had them atop of the league with the Boston Pride, presumably, and then some people also at the bottom. So where did you sort of see this Connecticut Whale team?
No, I had them as one of the teams to look out for. I thought they were going to be a surprising team. You know, they made a lot of changes from last year. You know, they bring in Abby Ives. You know, they bring in a big scorer like Amanda Conway. You get Kayla Friesen. It's a second overall pick. So I had really high expectations for this team, and still do.
And Kayla Friesen, you said the second overall pick. She comes into this team. Sure, she's a rookie, but she's not exactly dominating as maybe Grant Mentis is on Toronto. Do you think there's been any problem transitioning to the program for her?
No, I think we haven't seen as much scoring in Connecticut as we've seen with Toronto. But we saw a goal from Kayla Friesen early in the tournament on a really nice rocket of a shot. So I'm not really worried about her because everybody on the team is stepping up so far for the Whale, and they're led by Abby Ives right now in the net.
And taking a look at Abby Ives, she let 6 goals in tonight. She did make a fair number of saves, 31 saves on 37 shots from the Toronto Six. So it was certainly a good performance from the Connecticut Whale netminder. Do you think she was a little shaky tonight, or was it just too many shots?
I think she allowed 4 on 24, I believe. But when you look at the past few games for Connecticut, their defense has really been blocking a lot of shots, and they did that tonight, but it didn't seem to make as big of an impact as it has in the prior games. I think that's going to play a huge factor. That played a huge factor tonight, and I think you also have to look at the fact that Connecticut was without a few of their key players, and you add 4 new faces to the roster, a few hours before puck drop, and I think that played a huge factor into tonight's game as well. So I think Toronto is a strong team. They came in hot, and I think this is a wake-up call for Connecticut.
And you add those 4 new faces that you spoke about. I know that a lot of people in the NWHL and women's hockey community didn't really know that you could add players mid-bubble season, but you can, and they add 4 players mid-season. One was already in the bubble in the new goaltender. But what were your thoughts on the fact that they could add these players that were really unexpected by a lot of the fan base and women's hockey community?
No, I think in a bubble scenario, I think it's great, never knowing how many players you're going to lose, when you're going to lose them. So I think being able to add, those 4 girls tonight, just hours before the game is great. I think you add a girl like Rachel Aid who's had prior experience with the Whale. So I think that's going to be a huge impact. Somebody who's already been around that team. And Fujarmi, I think is what I think. Connecticut pulled Ives just to get her some rest till tomorrow night. I think with Jacko out, I think it dives his net moving forward.
Yeah, Abby Ives has been very dominant throughout the tournament, and they have a big game tomorrow night against the Minnesota Whitecaps, but they'll have to solve one problem, and that's their power play. They've gone 0 for 11 in the last 11 attempts they've had.
Yeah, and the power play's been an issue, and I think another thing is, if you look at the last 2 games, they've taken a lot of penalties, and at one point it's gonna come back to bite you. And you look at tonight, they allow a power play goal to Toronto, and I think one thing Connecticut really needs to work on is staying out of the box, because when you commit 5 or 6 penalties a game, you're not gonna win games. I mean, you may get lucky one of those games, but you're not gonna win every game when you commit that many penalties. So I think they really got to clean up in that area.
Definitely a bit of a dirty game from the Connecticut Whale tonight, but they have to get their power play clicking if they're going to find any success in this tournament going forward. Big game tomorrow night against the Minnesota Whitecaps for seeding rounds heading into the NWHL playoffs. That's all we've got from you, Armin, tonight. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Toronto Six postgame show. And we'll bring back in Justin Levine now. Justin, what do you think of Armin's answers and his sort of opinions on the Connecticut Whale so far?
I certainly agree with them. I think Kayla Friesen is no one to be concerned about. Certainly, their power play does need some work. But with the new faces, again, that's why I want to address, because, again, 4 were signed this morning, completely out of nowhere. And here's my issue with it, is the fact that this is a bubble season. If you're trying to keep COVID out, these players can tell you they've been home and, but they've been nowhere else. But, at the same time, I think that some of these players are trying to keep, keep themselves going and weren't really expecting to join since the bubble season. You're not really supposed to bring new players into the bubble, which is something that I think might get addressed later on because, again, I think media and fans alike were very confused by this, seeing Lisa Chesson join Buffalo yesterday. So, it's a tricky one because I see that obviously contributed to throwing Connecticut off tonight, certainly, because all of a sudden you're tossing new players and new lines and you're kind of who are you? And just have to figure it out, and that's not easy. So there's one. And then two,
I think it is tough bringing in players into the tournament, but I also find it a little weird that if you're going to have a bubble tournament where everybody's separated from the rest of the world, away from COVID and everything going on in the rest of the world, the fact you can bring players in and out and you can ship an entire team out and bring new players in is a little worrisome for me. It's more of a protected environment than it is bubble.
Yeah, it certainly is. And when we've already had a COVID issue with the Metropolitan Riveters, hence them needing to pull out, and some uncertainties within the Connecticut Whale with at least one player that we know of who is isolating and will not be joining them for the rest of the tournament, I think that was a really risky move, bringing any new players, because you're trying to curb any potential of COVID getting into the bubbles. Even if you have been home, travel-wise, it can still get in you and it can still spread within the team. So I don't really understand the logic behind bringing new players into a bubble of any form, whether it be protected environment or strict type bubble, as other leagues have done. So I'm a little confused with that, and I don't know how much clarity we're going to get on that. I wish the Connecticut Whale a healthy rest of the year, but I'm a little bit on the concerned side. But again, with regards to the game itself, tossing new players on new lines and just not giving them a chance to practice with them, literally just throwing them in last second is confusing, and it's going to throw anyone off. And my basic question is, how long were they in Lake Placid before they were signed, since they were in tonight? So again, just something else to think about.
It's very interesting, the fact that they can bring players in and out of the bubble. Probably not the plan that they were aiming for, because they didn't want players to get injured or sick, but it apparently was already planned, just not communicated. So I think that's a bit of an issue on the NWHL communication side of things. I do want to encourage all of you guys watching at home to contribute to the show. We can see your comments here on our screens and engage in our discussion. What do you think about players being allowed in and out of the bubble in the NWHL, the Metropolitan Riveters having to pull out, and other teams like the Buffalo Beauts and the Connecticut Whale being able to add players mid-tournament? Toronto hasn't done so yet, but they could if they wanted to. So we want to hear your thoughts on that. But getting back to the hockey, Justin, what do you think of Michaela Grant-Mantis? She's been unbelievable this tournament, and I just want to get your thoughts on her.
Michaela Grant-Mantis is unbelievable. Like you said, that's the perfect word. I wouldn't put it any other way. She scored 2 goals last night, her 3rd and 4th of the season/tournament. And then tonight comes in and scores another one along with an assist. And so you're seeing that through 6 games played. And she's been described as Digit Murphy, as a workhorse, as you're seeing in the graphic. And that's exactly what she is. She comes into every single shift and she does her best. She plays with her head down, and she gets the job done. She does what she needs to do. And so that's why you only see that she's only recorded 1 penalty up till this point, because she just, she knows how to use the ice to her advantage and sees the puck clearly. And so you'll never see her not in a play when there's a shift with her on the ice. It's just that simple. And she is the electrifying person on that kid line with Sarah Efcott-Godbout and Amy Curlew. And they've been playing really well together, which has allowed her so much success. And I think that's really nice, because it's been that way since practices here back in Ontario at Catlin Ice Sports. So seeing that come to life, and now seeing those other 2 come to life, it just adds that much more excitement. And I mean, it's thrilling to watch the success of it.
And she got a goal tonight. She got a goal that finished off a quick succession of goals for the Toronto Six. She put the cherry on top of the sundae with the 6th goal of the night for the Toronto Six, and we'll take a look at that right now.
A chance for 6, around and in. 6 for the Six. 6-0 Toronto.
6 goals for the Toronto Six. Michaela Grant-Mantis being absolutely amazing throughout this tournament. She makes your 3 stars once again. We'll get to that. Who are your 3 stars tonight?
Yeah, so she does make my 3 stars tonight. As you see here, she's number 1 with a goal and an assist in tonight's 6-0 victory with goal 6. Not like they needed it because the assurance was there at 3 or 4, but they certainly topped it off with Mackenzie McNeil getting them to 4, and then the rest of the way with Mentis being able to net number 6. Then you see McNeil again with the 2 goals. It just, seeing her finally light it up, and twice was enough to convince me that she deserves spot number 2 after a quiet rest of the tournament on the back end, of course. And then Elaine Chuli, who just shut the door tonight with the shutout. She continues to be an example as to what success an expansion team can have, and she's just amazing. And not to say that last night was a bad performance, but tonight was a huge one, if anything. So, both teams yesterday, Toronto and Minnesota, were chipping it back and forth, as we saw, hence the 4-3 victory with 23 seconds left. But seeing Truly just not even allow a chance tonight, just incredible. So you can't even blame her yesterday and say that she had a bad game, because she didn't. Both goalies were in the same boat, but tonight just not allowing anything in at any point through the game. She gets my 3rd star, and she'll certainly be probably my MVP of the tournament by the end of this, if not Michaela Grant-Mentis.
Elaine Chuli, certainly the hot hand for the Toronto Six right now. They're not going to go to Samantha Ridgewell if they don't need to, and Elaine Chuli is giving them every reason to stick with her all the way to potentially an Isabel Cup championship. Craig, thank you so much for your question. I don't think players are able to leave the bubble once they get in, but they are able to come in during the tournament, but that still was not communicated to us before the tournament, so it did catch a lot of media and fans off guard when Buffalo was able to add a couple players as well as the Connecticut Whale. But thanks so much for your question, Craig. And thank you guys for contributing to the show so far. We're always welcoming more questions, especially as we get on to the playoffs now, which are coming up for the Toronto Six. And they have the Y next to their Twitter bio. They're in the playoffs. They're the top seed.
They are the number 1 seed and the team to chase going into the semifinals, which start on Tuesday. I've heard that it's either Boston or Buffalo, more likely Boston in my mind. But again, things have a chance to change. Boston and Buffalo have the last game of their series tomorrow. Boston won today 6-0, much like Toronto. So, that's going to be a nail biter for the win. And it's just going to be exciting hockey. And then one of those teams will face Toronto, and as we know, Toronto beat Boston in a way that I think many didn't expect, but it contributed to their 3rd win. And this team just continues to go, up and at it whenever they can. They keep their heads down, they press hard, and it's what's allowed them so much success. And the confidence of the full team finally clicking. This coaching staff is over the moon, because they're working day and night, both on the ice and over Zoom. And so to see these results is just fantastic.
The coaching staff is certainly over the moon. And I think the atmosphere in that locker room after games, we've got a video coming up right now of just how great that atmosphere is after games, jamming out to Taylor Swift and making TikToks. They're just in a great mood on this 4-game win streak for the Toronto Six. Certainly a great atmosphere in that locker room. I know a lot of women's hockey players will be looking up to that, wanting to make their way into the NWHL to play under a coach like Digit Murphy, Lisa Haley, and Spiros Anastas. It sounds like a great tournament so far for the Toronto Six. And I know you spoke to Digit Murphy after this game. How was she feeling after a 4th straight win for the Toronto Six?
She was thrilled. This makes history for a Canadian team in the NWHL who made history as the first Canadian franchise. So she's absolutely thrilled. She was thrilled after the win over Minnesota, a really important win. And so this was just, the cherry on top, essentially. And wow, what a way they did it. And so, she gives huge thanks to Spiros and Lisa, of course, both huge contributors in that, doing the video over Zoom after games and ahead of the next one. So, the mood there is just so much fun. She loves being with them, and she said that to the American media as well. So, if you haven't watched this tournament yet, you want to watch them continue their successful run on a 4-game win streak. I think that they were hoping that they would get to this point. They weren't sure if they would, especially after the first 2 games. Things started to get a little worrisome, but now that's not even a question.
And over 1 million people tuned in to watch yesterday's games. I don't know the numbers for today, but it's about to get a lot bigger and a lot more accessible as these games go live on NBCSN for the next set of games after this round robin and knockout stage portion. For the semifinals and the finals, they'll be on cable TV in the US, still available to stream on Twitch in Canada. That's all we've got for today's show, but I do want to throw to this one goal from Mackenzie McNeil before we say goodbye to both Justin and I.
Here's the goal scorer, McNeil. McNeil scores again! A quick wrister. Toronto leads 4-0.
Mackenzie McNeil was fantastic tonight. She's from the Toronto area, so definitely cool to see somebody from the Toronto area lighting it up for the Toronto NWHL team. Justin, what are your closing thoughts on this game and looking ahead to the next game?
I'm just excited to see this team get to this point. I think it was a matter of time before they started clicking, and their confidence has given me confidence that they're going to get to where they want to be, and that's the Isabel Cup final game. And I would love to see them face, if I had to pick, probably Boston, just because it's going to make things a lot of fun. But again, depends who wins tomorrow for their next game at least. Then we'll go from there. But terrific job done from Digit, and they certainly deserve to celebrate, and they do it after each game that they win. They press hard, and I think they worked the longest hours probably of any team, just because coming into this year, they know that they had to work a little bit harder than the rest. And so they've been working since August for this moment, and they deserve a day off to recover and to just be happy with the point that they've gotten to. So really pleased, and we'll see you next time on another edition of the Six Post Game. But keep your eye out for the Toronto Six.